G'day and welcome to the Niggly Niche Cast. It's the boy, Niggly Darkness, the Papatite Panther, here with the Wobbly Wildcard for another episode of the Niche Cast, the first episode of the Niche Cast with Aotearoa in a full, crazy, amazing, beautiful, however you want to view it. It's a lockdown. It's a full-on lockdown, and we're just trooping through, not giving a fuck, and just seeing what happens and seeing how we move through this situation. Wobbly Wildcard, what's crack-a-lackin' up in the sanctuary of the northern tip of the North Island?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite northern tip north, but I just, I kind of feel I'm in a situation here as far as lockdown goes. I'm away from the big old hustle and bustle, like people crowded on top of each other, and got a little bit of room to maneuver with and keep my mind sane. So I don't know. I find that the old lockdown period isn't a million miles away from what I'm used to doing anyway, just day to day. So I don't know. I guess I'm more prepared than most people in that regard. I went for a run this morning. And obviously we're not on like full on lockdown at this point. It's still a level 3 isolation run, or what, 3? Yeah, level 3. So I don't know, I was expecting less, well, rather fewer people. Losing my brain already. I was expecting fewer people just on the trail. I thought it would be a nice little isolating, maybe if I'm lucky, I wouldn't even have to see anybody there. But I ran past the old dude with the little Scotch Terrier, the dog that I see all the time on my run, and I sort of like nodded to him, "G'day," and like, it's a little quieter than usual today, isn't it? And he goes, "Yeah, telling me you're the first person I've seen." And then I thought, well, obviously you're lying, because there's like two septuagenarian couples walking like 50 meters behind you, and I'd seen a couple tourists at the top of the waterfall, and trail running, by the way, if anyone didn't gather that. So I don't know, it wasn't quite as empty as I hoped, and I deliberately went out of my way just a little bit to drive past the supermarket and have a peek, and it was all bloody crowded with cars, and I'm like, yeah, maybe not today. I'll wait till the actual lockdowns if I to go stock up on beverages and essentials and such. But yeah, it's I don't want to say it's a strange time, or it's a weird time, or it's a crazy time, or it's a difficult time, because those are exactly what everyone else seems to be saying right now. So I'll just say it is what it is.
It is what it is, indeed. And we're just going to keep trying to have the conversations throughout this period. But I think what we, like, everyone's, when you're like, I'm completely bored by like the corona content that people are, and discussion around corona, like the little videos everyone's making, like, we can do it, get through it, and like how athletes are spending the time. Like, I think it's just it's a bit weird. But so let's unless your meditations and your ponderings are deep into the coronavirus situation, which would be kind of depressing to talk about if we went deep into that kind of stuff. What's on your what have you been thinking about? What have you been pondering and meditating on while all this stuff is happening? Because I think our duty, our job, is to provide people with a bit of interesting conversation away from this COVID-19 bubble that everyone is existing in. So unless you're desperate to, steer us away from corona discussions and take us wherever you want to go. What have you been thinking about?
No, that's exactly in my line of thinking as well. I think, like, I saw someone doing a little tweety thing the other day about, like, why don't they just have 24-hour news, and then we can get these updates whenever we need them? And it's like, well, because if you watch more than 20 minutes, unless it's immediately after a government press conference or something, of any kind of news, you're going to lose your brain, because it doesn't take long before they start calling in, like, how long until they start calling in self-proclaimed experts off Facebook or whatever, and just get, like, there's really not much more to say other than the fact that everyone knows what the situation is at this point. Everyone knows the best way to go about it. Everyone knows that the stuff that's being implicated is the stuff that's all in our best interest. So we just do what we got to do for a little while, and eventually we come around to a point where we don't have to worry about it anymore. But I was thinking while I was running this morning about how, like, because it's easy to think about how this is just like history in the making. And then I sort of had a different perspective on that idea, which is that one day this is just going to be a Wikipedia page, right? This whole sort of experience. And I'm like, well, that's actually kind of a depressing way to think about it, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know. It was a weird one, just sort of running through the woods and trying to, like, because nothing seemed different in a funny way. Like, I thought it would be more isolated than it was. I mean, in a few days it probably will be. But it sort of seemed just like normal. It's just a matter of incorporating a bit of common sense and reality into your daily life, and sweet as. I mean, obviously, if your work is more affected than us, it's going to be more of an issue. But that's what we're doing here. We're just sitting, having a chat, and these chats are going to be a little, maybe, a little less obviously flowing from the topics we'd normally talk about, because those topics aren't really matters that are on hand at the moment. But like, it's I agree with you. I think it's our job just to give people a bit of respite and a bit of normality and a bit of entertainment, and just hopefully offer our company for the duration of these podcasts and the articles that we continue to write, and hopefully that just helps people just get through day to day to day to day to day, which is always the best way to do it, isn't it? Just like one day at a time, moment by moment. So yeah, I don't know. We got a bit of a I mean, I'm tempted to throw it out there and say, like, from this, like, people who are listening to this, like, what do you want us to talk about? Like what kind of things would make for a good podcast? What do people want to listen to? We might, like, we're basically at this point, we're doing it for you listening. So yeah, like, hit us up on the normal channels. This is probably going to cross over into Patreon territory, though, isn't it? On that topic, I suppose, I've heard, like, that I would normally say this for a Patreon, but we just did it recently, so I'll ask you right now while I've got the opportunity. Have you done the cold shower thing very often?
Every morning. So I started doing that.
I wondered if that was going to be the case.
When I was in Chile, I got into that, and I can't remember what exactly put me into that space of doing it, but I started doing that when I was living in Chile, so that was around 2017, and there's been moments of more and less resistance, which is an interesting idea. Resistance, which I haven't actually read the book, but it's maybe The War of Art, or one of those books that I've heard discussions around the idea of resistance. So anytime you go to do something, there's going to be resistance in your mind, and dealing with that resistance is a battle in itself, especially with creative pursuits, but it can be applied to anything you're doing. And it's I just heard about it's a resistance, especially if you do it in the morning. The first thing you don't want to do is get in a cold shower. So it's a good way to start your day. It's like the idea of, another one is making your bed in the morning, and having that act done every morning sets you up for your day. And if you can build your morning routine on a certain number of little tasks like that, so you make your bed, you have a cold shower, you might do some exercise, you might do a meditation, you might do a morning journal, morning pages as it's called. So little things like that to start your day in the morning makes you feel good, makes you feel powerful, and it makes you, like, if you start your day with a cold shower, it makes you feel like you've had a small win to start your day, and that can build into momentum. There are some health benefit stuff, and that gets into Wim Hof territory, where he's diving into cold plunges into ice water and maintaining a consistent breathing pattern, which is very good for you. I don't go to that extreme. Like, I'm literally just hopping in the cold shower in the morning and just trying to control your breathing. So that's a key thing. Like, if you get that shock from the cold water, your body's natural reaction is to go and you have that, like, whole fight or flight mode. But if you can maintain a relaxed breathing pattern through your body while you're dealing with the shock of the cold, it's apparently good for you. So there's a bunch of little different reasons why it's good for you that got me into it. Plenty of videos on YouTube, plenty of like things you can read. Like, I'm not an expert on this shit, I just do it and I feel good. So I've had times where CBF, like, I'm a human being and resistance is real, so sometimes you just get into a cycle where it doesn't happen. But for the bulk of the time, get up in the morning, have a cold shower, just try and get into a relaxed zone, and then you just flick the nozzle to a hotter shower. And you get a bit of that hot-cold going on, you're focused on your breathing through in the cold shower bit, and it's just a good way to start your day. So yeah, yes, correct, I do.
Yeah, right. Because I've been like, I've tried it in the past, like going way back, like years back, after exercise specifically, just when I'm overheated, because it seems like a natural thing to do. And I've flirted with it a little bit since I heard Wim Hof on Russell Brand's podcast, probably a year and a half ago or something like that. I'm not sure exactly how long ago that would have been. Maybe not quite that long, I'm not sure. But I've heard a few more things recently, and I'm apparently big at the Ole Academy, because Declan Edge was talking about it once on a podcast, which, it's like just a few more occasions where it's kind of bombarded my wider consciousness, and so when that tends to happen, I'm like, well, okay, I'll give it a try, why not? So I have been a little more... The thing that really pushed me to try that more is that, okay, so we've got a shower up here, which is, first of all, we're running off tank water. Second of all, it takes maybe like 30 seconds, possibly slightly longer. Like, it's a annoyingly long amount of time for the water to actually heat up. So initially, before, I don't know why that is, the cold water in the pipes or whatever, but it takes an amount of time, and so like the water pressure as well was the other thing, was moving from Auckland and a nice centralized water system throughout the whole city. Like, those two things hit immediately, was that the water pressure is much lower on the shower, which, by the way, is such a overrated aspect. It's the worst thing in the world the first couple days, and then by like the third or fourth day, you're completely used to it, and it's not a drama ever again. But then obviously the cold water thing, and then like the issue was because obviously over all the summer there was a drought, right? So there was like, tank was real low, got to conserve water at every opportunity. So there was like not getting in the shower for the first 30 seconds was such a waste. I mean, what I got to doing was chucking a bucket in there, catching that water, using that to water the garden or whatever afterwards. So I'm trying to recycle it. And I thought, well, I'll have shorter showers if I can get some of the showering done in the time when it's cold. And then because these other ideas were hitting like the sort of trendiness of it, so I thought, yeah, whatever. And so I have been ever since, probably for at least a couple weeks, maybe a month, just jumping in the shower nice and early and trying to build up a little bit of a tolerance, because it's bloody hard and it's absolutely freezing. And I mean, I don't know if this is scientifically proven, but I have a feeling that cold water running off the tank is a lot colder than the cold water running off the Auckland water supply. So that is like, and it smells a little bit different too. Like, it does sort of smell like tank water in a way when it hasn't been heated, particularly when it's not being filtered coming through the shower. Well, it's being filtered, but it's not being filtered through the extra double filter that comes through. These are complicated tank water situations for you, but the drinking water has an extra filter on the other end, so it's get double times. So, which, by the way, also tastes nicer than tap water. I guess it doesn't have the chlorine, it's not chlorine, fluoride in it, which, I don't know, that's good for your teeth, so it's probably a bad thing for me who has bad teeth. But regardless, like, I am only up to a point where I can tolerate just back of the neck, face, work my way in. I'm not like jumping straight in and just standing there breathing perfectly like I would like to do for 30 full seconds until the hot water comes on, because it's harsh, man. It's rough, but I tell you what, once it, like, because it's naturally heating up at the point while I'm doing this, it slowly gets warmer and warmer, and then you hit that hot spot, and that's such a nice feeling when you go from like freezing to warm. So I don't know. I'm building up a tolerance for it. I'm very much like only at the probably an appropriate metaphor here, just dipping my toes in at this point. But I'm slowly getting there, and not yeah. I wondered if you might have been someone who's indulged in this yourself. So a little bit of extra encouragement doesn't go astray. Chatting it up gets a bit of the enthusiasm going. Sweet as.
And it's a case of whatever you do in the morning, if you can do one thing or numerous things that have you conquering that side of you, that piece of you, that pocket of you that says no. So whether it's waking up 6 a.m. or, earlier and actually getting up out of bed because there's a part of you that's like, nah, let's just stay here. And then when it comes to getting in the shower, there's a part of you that's like, nah, I don't need to do it today. And the more things that you can do that are along those lines in the morning are just going to set you up so well for the day with how you approach the day, as opposed to, because there are days when I don't get up at the right time and nah, and then that leads to, fuck the shower. Who cares? And that snowballs and that compounds throughout your day as well. So whatever it is, I do think there are some more body benefits to exposure to cold, however you want to do it. But I think the process of doing stuff in the morning that involves you fighting that resistance, conquering that resistance, and gathering the small wins, that's pretty awesome. And you can also combine it. So when I'm in the cold bit, I'm just focusing on deep breaths, slowing down my breathing, but also focusing on breathing. So I'm actually oxygenating my body. So I'm actually spreading oxygen throughout my body because I've just woken up. So when you wake up, you want to get hydrated. You want to get your body moving so that blood's flowing through your body and oxygenizing, whatever it is, spreading oxygen throughout your body. And then when it goes hot, I start doing the breath of fire, which is just hard and fast breathing only through your nose. So it might sound something like this, and so on. And that activates your body, like it gets you in a more, because you've just been super relaxed in the cold water, and then you want to start your day by getting a bit of energy, a bit of vitality, and oxygenating your body further, and that's where the hard and fast breathing comes into it as well. So there's a whole lot of processes you can go through. There's a whole lot of dudes and women who have covered this extensively. People like Aubrey Marcus from On It, people like Wim Hof, Kyle Kingsbury. There's all sorts of little pockets of society who are tapping into this sort of thing more and more, and it just comes down to just trying to get the best out of you and your body and your mind, and little things that you can do every day to put yourself in the best position to be the best person that you can be throughout the day. And I think a lot of it, like, all this stuff is free. So everyone's looking for diets. Everyone's looking for things to buy to help them. Everyone's looking for more materialistic trends, but there are things that you can do every day that are completely free or very minimal costs. Like, you might just buy lemons and limes and some salt, and then you've got an electrolyte drink that you can drink in the morning, because when you wake up, you don't necessarily want to bombard your body with water. You want to rehydrate your body after because apparently you lose a lot of water during your sleep. So the most important thing is to hydrate your body, and apparently that is best done with electrolytes as opposed to just straight up and down water. Now, you don't need to go out and buy a Powerade. You can just get some salt, get some lime juice, get some lemon juice, put it into water, and then you've got the nutrients and the electrolytes that you need to hydrate your body. So all of these things involve very minimal cost, or they're free. Whether it's yoga, meditation, exercise, like high intensity exercise in the morning as part of your routine is a fantastic way to wake yourself up, get yourself moving, get your blood pumping. all these things are free, but they put you in such a good space for your day, and you've started your day on the right foot. You're not spending any money, minimal money, and it's just it's a far more, even stuff like earthing. Earthing is probably the latest thing that I've added to the setup, to the routine. It's not part of the morning routine, but it's part of the daily practice that I've, over the last about 6 months ago, started to get the same messages that you're getting now about the cold showers. And earthing is just being in contact with the earth. So going barefoot and just walking on grass. Sometimes I get a bit weird and I'll wrap my hands around the branch of a tree, because the trees have energy. They provide, I'm not at all in tune with the science. I've just heard and then felt how calming, how grounding it is. So if I can feel that I'm drifting off into ego, if I feel like I'm drifting off into stress, if I'm drifting off into anxiety and anger or frustrations, any of those human emotions and feelings that come, all you need to do is just go barefoot on the grass. And there's a reason why, Australian people, not Australian people, but the Australian NRL community is so old school. So when Brad Fittler takes his New South Wales Origin team for a barefoot walkthrough, it's all, oh, woo woo, oh, what's Brad Fittler doing? He's a bit crazy. But there's a reason why stuff like that is happening, and there's a reason why all this stuff is becoming more and more popular now, because now we're understanding why it's good. Now we're understanding how it benefits you. And that is something that you can do. I usually do it later in the afternoon. So, for example, I feel apparently your testosterone increases mid-afternoon. It's just part of a natural cycle or something like that. And that coincides with a few more. There's a patch in the afternoon for me between 2 p.m. and 5 to 6 p.m. where I've found it's a lot easier or less resistance for negative thoughts to come through. So, and the way my schedule lines up, that's when I'm at some stage in the afternoon, I'm going to have time, and that time is used to get bare feet on the grass, especially the conditions we're in now, not the weather conditions, but the world conditions. These are such simple initiatives that anyone can do anywhere you are. Even if you just get your feet on the concrete, you're still getting the energy from the earth, which is legit energy because you'll feel it. So if you're standing, walking on the grass, on the concrete, on the sand, and you're just breathing through your nose, which is a key thing. You don't really want to be a mouth breather, because mouth breathing isn't how you're supposed to breathe. You're meant to breathe through your nose, and then through yoga you breathe in your nose, out your mouth. But when you're doing meditations, you're kind of just breathing in your nose, and when you're tired, you breathe through your mouth. When you're in the best condition that you're in, everything's calm and relaxed, you're breathing through your nose. So go for a walk on grass, on concrete, or just stand there, stand around some trees and just breathe in your nose, out your nose. And it's so calming. It's legit grounding you to the earth. You'll feel a stronger connection to the earth, but you'll notice that your mind is far more relaxed. You'll notice that your body is far more relaxed, and you can integrate it into a meditative practice if you're just doing it silent and you're just on the earth and you're just breathing through your nose. All of that is part of it as well. So that's something that's I've actually felt the biggest gains over the past year or so, is getting out and trying to do that every day. Just get something on the earth. It's one thing to be surrounded by nature. That is a beautiful thing in itself, and there's a visual element to it. So the visual element to seeing nature, being in nature, being surrounded by nature is very good for you, relaxing and grounding you. But literally just getting out in your backyard and having your bare feet on the grass, it's a beautiful thing, and it's so easy, so simple. As anything we're talking about, it's free, easy, simple, and it's so beneficial. It's been so beneficial to me, relaxing me, grounding me, and I think that's so many people would benefit from doing it, especially now. Just like make time, get out there, and connect with the earth. And ultimately, how about this one? We're in New Zealand. We are on the land of New Zealand, which means we are on the land of Aotearoa. And the people of Aotearoa, the Māori people, didn't really have like religion. Their religion and their spiritual beliefs are all from the land. So it's not necessarily like there are gods, there are deities, but they are gods of the land. We're talking Papatua Nuku, Ranganui. They are gods of the land, but it's also like when you meet someone, you introduce yourself as, this is my mountain, this is my river, this is who I am because I was raised by the mountain. I was raised by the land. I was raised by the sea. So when we bring that around, having a greater connection to the land of Aotearoa, in Aotearoa, that is a huge spiritual practice, I believe. And it's less about having a connection to God in a religious sense, but through the land of Aotearoa, you're tapping into that ancient energy. You're tapping into the ancient wisdom of the people who were here before us, and their connection to God, their connection to spirituality was through the land. It was through the animals. It was through the water. And so take that on board for itself. Like it's an amazing idea to follow and keep at the forefront of your mind. But the best way to do that is to touch the land, to be the land, to get in the water, to watch the water, observe the water, because that's just not helping you in that moment by grounding you, earthing, relaxing you, easing the tension, but it's also helping you tap into a greater connection to the land of Aotearoa as well.
Yeah, man, and like, these may sound like kinda, trippy hippie kinda ideas, but like, first of all, yeah, cool, they do because they are, and maybe there's, something to that, and like, I mean, I wouldn't quite call myself a hippie, but I'm certainly stylized in a, I'll put it this way, I listen to the Grateful Dead, so there you go. But like, there's also, like, just believe me as well when I say there's immediate practical benefits to just having the discipline and the routines of these kind of things. Like, you will notice specific benefits just day to day from being able to, because like, people are so almost afraid of being alone at this time. And I'm not talking about loneliness, I'm talking about like solitary, just taking some time in solitude. Like, it's actually a real gift and a benefit to have time to yourself. And all these things that we're talking about are solitary acts, aren't they? Like meditating, yoga. Obviously, yoga you can do in a community, you can do it in a class, you can share it with other people. I mean, we're right sharing certain experiences with these kind of things. But like, the actual act is you alone, like taking part in this thing. Earthing, the cold showers, the just of making your bed when you get up in the morning. I will, not gonna lie, this is not one that I have in my, I'll just sleep in an unmade bed most days. It's not really, I have incorporated myself personally, but, like, and these things can often seem a little bit intimidating as well to get started, but like, and that's, like I said about the cold shower thing, I'm not very good at it. I'm kind of still shocked by how cold exactly it is, but I'm trying to build up a tolerance. Like, you do it one day at a time, you get better. And you sort of need to commit just a little bit of time. And it, like, meditating, you can start off at 5 minutes a day or something like that. And you can build your way up to 10, 15, 20 minutes if you're keen, 30 minutes if you're super keen, but like, I don't think I've ever lasted 30 minutes at a meditation. But like this, it does take a little bit of time, and you do have to ride through the early, just initial hiccups, because the first few times, once you get into the routine, is the hardest. But once you've gone at it for a few days in a row, it's a lot easier to do the next few days in a row, right? So, I mean, this is the perfect time to be starting to incorporate those kind of routines, like things you've wanted to do but haven't had a chance. This is the perfect time, like, to be able to do that. And yeah, like, don't overthink it. Just have a crack for a few weeks, and then eventually you can work that into your actual daily life when things begin to resume doing what they have been doing in the past. But just like, it's like, I just want to reiterate that point about what a gift it is to be able to feel comfortable in your own solitude. Because like, I think Leonard Cohen, I'm pretty sure it wrote something about this. It's sort of, I think more later in his life. I can't remember exactly where I heard it, but I relate it to him. So first of all, if Leonard Cohen said it, then, you know, there you go. You're sorted already. That's all you need to know. And actually, I mean, I think the don't overthink it part of it is probably a good point to reiterate as well. Like, just don't overthink it. When you, like you mentioned, not having the exact science of why the earthing thing works, it's like, yeah, but like, you know as well as I do, you don't need the science though. It feels good to kick your shoes off and feel the grass between your toes. It just feels good. So there's the thing. Like, that's all the evidence that you need right there. So when you go to the beach and you got your jandals on, whatever, you kick your jandals off, you carry them, and you feel the sand squeezing between your toes as you walk along. That's just what you do for a reason, because like, nature in its way is telling you that this is just this is the done thing, you know. This is how you got to do it. This is how it goes.
And all those things are kind of innate within us, because why do people park their car at a lookout spot? It's because it feels good to look at a view. Like, there's all these things we know. All these things we know deep within us feel good. It feels good to look at a mountain range. It feels good to just look out at the ocean. It feels good to be in a forest. It feels good to be in the water. These are things that just feel good. And that's what makes us feel good. And that's when you know what feels good, you also know what doesn't quite feel so good, and you know how to balance those things out. And speaking of balance, I think if you're a human being and you aren't comfortable being by yourself and being with your thoughts, that's probably something that you really need to work on, because you're not like living your best human existence if you can't be comfortable with yourself and with your thoughts. But that needs to be balanced out, because something I've also been absorbing a lot of content about is something about the blue zone, or blue zones, which are like pockets of the world where they have the longest life expectancy. And there are numerous factors that come into play. There's numerous factors like diet, or exercise, even just how cities are laid out. And this was quite interesting. It was incredibly frustrating, because maybe the environments that we live in don't have this as a priority, but the way cities are laid out with less cars, less roads, more gathering spaces, more nature integrated in and around the city, these are things that there's so many factors at play to what has made these blue zones around the world. They're primarily near the equator, which is a factor as well. But one of the key things is the community. One of the key things that contributes to people's happiness, which there's all these other things, but happiness is super important to living a long life. Like, you need to be happy. And happiness comes from communal gatherings. It comes from being around people. It comes from having a group of people that you can always talk to. It comes from sharing food with people. It comes from telling stories with people. It doesn't come from having a gathering with people where everyone's on their phone. It doesn't come from a gathering where people are disinterested, they're disengaged. The benefits come from having connection with people and talking to them, listening to them, sharing experiences, sharing conversation, sharing information, sharing food, sharing drink, sharing laughter, sharing like just the things that come from human beings interacting. So definitely need to be comfortable with your own mind. You definitely need to be comfortable within your own skin. And maybe that's the first thing to nail. That's the first thing you need to take care of, because then you can go into the social situations that are so important, the community, and because you've maybe put in the work to be the best that you can be in your head and in your body, then you can bring the best you to those community gatherings. And you can bring the best you to building connections with other people. So it's a very important balance to figure out, is how to maintain connection, maintain community. And community is the key word, because you want that feeling of community, and you want all the little offshoots of being in a community that they have. And how we live our lives in modern society isn't really conducive to being part of a community, because you might not know your neighbor. Because you're so busy working, you might not see your friends as much as you want to. So you've got to figure out what is best for you and what is best for your friends, family, and your community that you're trying to gather with. How can you actually do it in modern society? But it's pretty much the key takeaway that I've gathered from listening and hearing about the blue zones and living a long, fulfilled life, is it's not necessarily like, because there's things like the diets that they have. So, maybe a high-fat diet, less junk food, obviously. And there's all like things like that, like tangible steps that you can do and ways to live your life, but it's kind of just your happiness and your satisfaction and your fulfillment as a person. And a key factor, perhaps the biggest factor of that, is social interaction and community, and balancing out the need to be the best self that you can be, while also serving other people, while also listening to other people. Like however you want to define service to other people, being there for other people, sharing with other people, that is so important to living a balanced, holistic life as well.
Yeah, I think there's 3 words that you said there that sum it up from my perspective for all that. Happiness and fulfillment are the first 2, because I think all those other factors, exercise and health and those kind of things, like those are kind of givens for being like healthy and living a long life and those kind of things, and getting a lot out of your life for the time that you have as well. Like, those are obviously like givens for all of that, but the major factors are the happiness and fulfillment that underlie it. And if people who eat well are gonna be probably happier, they're gonna be healthier, they're not gonna get as sick. People who exercise often, there's scientifically proven links between exercise and good mental health. Like, it's one of the best things you can do if you're feeling a bit blue, if you're feeling a bit down, is like go for a run, get on the bike, all those kind of things. Like, just do some exercise, sweat it out, and you will 100% feel better afterwards. That, like, I think it all comes down to that underlying thing of happiness and fulfillment, and that's the big deal. And yeah, the other word of the 3 is balance, because yes, like, the community aspect is probably the thing that brings the most obvious level of happiness and fulfillment, particularly for older people as well. And that's why this, like, time that we're in now and the next month or so is going to be very difficult for a lot of people, because that kind of thing is being limited to, and like for good reason, because if you want to have more time afterwards, you need to limit it now, especially for the people we're talking about who are the most at risk as well. So like, there are ways around that. We live in just incredible times of technology, and it's pretty easy just to like flip a text or a message to people, you can't go and see them, but you can at least say like, hey, how you doing? You holding up all right? How's it going? Kind of thing. Reach out, make sure people are coping in their own way, and then eventually, and it's, as they say, this too shall pass. Eventually, you come around to a point where there's gonna be a transitional point getting back to normality as well. But like, you get there, and then we're not going to take these kind of things for granted. We're going to have a much better understanding of, like, obviously the sports side of thing is pretty clear as well. Like, we're not going to moan with a crap game of football on, because it's like, well, we went through that month or two where we didn't have any football whatsoever. So, yeah, certainly not going to moan at this point. But then I think those things are, like, a lot of people's priorities are going to be shaken up by all this, and they're going to realize what the things that matter. I think people already probably have, just by the threat. Realize, or most people who are smart anyway, like, just the things that we value most and the things that we get the most value from, we're going to understand those things a little bit clearer. And then on the other point on that is, like, the thing about balancing solitude and the communal side of things. Like, obviously you need both. That's what balance means. But you know, the people who you think about who are, like, the friendliest, most outgoing, like, the most popular people that you know. When people talk about people like that, they tend to come around to things like, oh, they're just so comfortable in their own skin. Like, look at, like, they don't walk into a room feeling shy or embarrassed that everyone's judging them or whatever. They're just happy to be who they are, whoever they are, sort of thing. Like, that comes down to being comfortable. Like, that comes down to being comfortable in your own solitude. Like, it's the same thing. The people who can handle that, the people who have, I won't say mastered it, because it's not something you ever master. It's, again, another balancing act. It's something you gotta always keep and, just keep working on, keep going through the routines and stuff like that to keep everything nice and aligned. But the people who are in that kind of mode are often the most outgoing, interesting, the people you want to spend time with, the most, the people who probably benefit the most from the community side of thing. Like, it's the other thing about balance, is that in a funny way, one side doesn't just level out the other, one side uplifts the other, and then everything is uplifted because of that. So, plenty of opportunity over the next month to work on all that and come out the other side a friendly and healthy and happy and fulfilled person. So, I don't know, we can all get to work now, I guess.
And it also works the other way, because some people are so outgoing and so dependent on being around other people that it's like they're overcompensating for the fact that they don't want to be with themselves.
Yeah, a sort of desperation thing to it.
So either way, you can get caught up in the extreme, and you can find yourself, so you can see it with other people as well. So someone who never wants to be by themselves, but may look like the life of the party. They may look like Mr. who everyone's talking to, everyone's always around this person, or this person's always around this person, the other people. This person's always looking for someone to hang out with. This person's always trying to avoid being with themselves. So again, that's the whole balance, is that you need to, I think the key to happiness, the key to life, in the sense that, like, the meaning of life is to just live a happy, balanced life. It's all about how you factor in the variables that are at play, and how you balance out each aspect of your life. So you might eat too much fast food, then it's just about balancing it out. You don't need to stop doing anything, you just need to balance out how different things are working in your life. So, and that the social example and the social context can be applied to, like, any little thing. So you might be drinking too much alcohol. Well, maybe you just need to drink less alcohol and a little bit more water or green tea. It's not you need to stop doing anything, you just need to find the balance of what works for you and what areas you are lacking. So you might be going far too deep into the social side of things, and because you're feeling a lack of balance, then you might need to take time for yourself, and you might need to put more effort into yourself and understanding yourself, so that when you do come back to the social aspect, you're in a far better position to be of service, to be of assistance to other people in those environments as well. So I think balance is a really important thing now, especially like we're dealing with the situation that we're dealing with. I don't have a console, and I know you don't have a console either. So it's like there's we're kind of coming from maybe a weird perspective in the sense that we're not going to sit here and play PlayStation or play Xbox or play computer games during this time. So a lot of the stuff that we're talking about might not be super relatable to many of the people listening because they have Xboxes, they have PlayStations, they have computer games that they can play. And to be honest, like, I'm kind of jealous right now, and I would have loved to just have a PlayStation and Xbox where I could sit down and pass a few hours or whatever. Like, that would be honkadory. But again, it's all about balance. And if you're trying to better yourself and be the best that you can be, it's about finding time to. Where the whole thing is a lockdown, but you still need to exercise. You still need to, as you said, like, catch up on other people, because it's a time of isolation, but it's also a time of finding balance. So it's a time of finding the balance between the isolation and the community. It's a time of being quiet and within, and reading a book, and getting your body moving, and making sure that you're walking, running, pumping weights. It's a time of creativity. It's just finding the balance in all the different aspects of your life, which is going to be different for each individual, and trying to best implement that balance depending on where you are in like the spectrum of like being an individual. You might be at a point where you're just figuring out that there are imbalances in your life. You might be at a point where you thought you had things nailed, and you've been on this journey for a bunch of years, but now you're realizing that there are small imbalances. You might be super duper balanced and you're in a great position. Everyone's going to fall at a different level of that spectrum, and it just feels like a convenient time to figure out that balance, and figuring out, because there's no point trying to find balance in shit that you don't like. So you need to, the best way to find that balance is doing things that you like, and in the opposites. So whether you just hate exercising, well, just go for a walk. Do something like go for a walk and listen to your favorite music. Go for a walk and listen to a podcast. You don't necessarily need to go out and do a sprint and do a CrossFit exercise session and pump weights and do pull-ups and all that stuff. No, but you need the balance. So what is going to work for you to help balance things out? And it's just an interesting time to kind of process all of that and embrace what we have.
Yeah, interesting opportunity to do all that as well. I as you say, don't have a console. I'm not a gamer of any point, but I was tempted to maybe jump on the old Pirate Bay or something and have a peek at, the latest version of Football Manager or whatever while I have a little bit of time. But then I heard them talking on Football Weekly podcast about this, and they were saying like isolation plus Football Manager would be like trying to sell crack at an AA meeting. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll stay away from it after all. But I've sort of, the thing that stuck with me from that is the bit about like the balance of the social versus and like, because I think it's a lot of people who push the social thing too much because they're uncomfortable with themselves. And I was thinking at first, like, it's obvious, and also obviously it goes the other way too. Like, people who withdraw from society because they're uncomfortable with themselves, therefore they don't feel like they can show themselves in public. So, and then you just sit in your solitude, which is very, very, like, that's almost the most unhealthy of all of this, is sitting in your solitude, unhappy with yourself. Like, but I was thinking at first, like, I reckon you can tell the difference between the people who are pushing the social, or like overly social thing, the people who just have to go out and party every weekend kind of thing, versus the people who are just naturally social and do it what comes like comfortable to them because they're well balanced or whatever. Then I thought, you know what, I'm not sure you can. Like, sometimes probably it's obvious, but I don't know. Like, I read a lot of biographies, specifically of like creative people. It's something like is one of the things I tend to come back to often. Is how like people, because there's such a stretch of pressure at that level as well, where you're talking about like the kind of people that have biographies and autobiographies written are people obviously who are going to be able to sell those things. So we're talking famous people like, and I think a lot of those, like, because my automatic thing that just my brain went to when you're talking about that kind of person was like the stereotypical musician who's out every night partying after the show sort of thing and just keep going, living this like sort of excessive lifestyle. And then they like those people are really fun to be around, and you want to hang with those type of people, especially when they're creating brilliant things, like putting this like kind of level of creativity and artistic output out into the world. You want to be close to that kind of level of genius or whatever. But those people, like, just reading a lot of books about people like that, bro, they always burn out. Like, it happens sometimes later than others, sometimes earlier than others, sometimes in a way which they just, like, think of how many rock stars and musicians have died young, or sometimes they get through the rehab thing and come out the other side and they're all good. Like, whenever we're talking about addiction, and I think people these days mostly understand this, certainly on a, the level that matters. The general, like, Joe public might not, might still bring a level of resentment or whatever to this, but more often than not, like, on a clinical level, people understand addiction is it's not like there's a chemical addiction that it comes to, alcohol or drug dependency or whatever, but it begins with a mental thing. Like, almost always there's a hole that's trying to be filled. There's that, exactly what we're talking about, that imbalance kind of thing. And they, those people always crash eventually. It always comes back to them. So, yeah, swinging that back around. And then the other point I was going to make is I can't really talk too much about it because I'm still a little bit cursory at this point, but I just downloaded a documentary to watch that was made, and I think in the last year of his life, because he died a couple months ago. But are you familiar with Ram Dass?
I'm familiar with who he is. There was a podcast that I listened.
If you listen to Duncan Trussell's podcast, you'll know of him. So.
No, it's I think I was listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast that had someone who had spent time with Ram Dass. I think I'm pretty sure it was Tim Ferriss, and it was pretty much like someone who, just trying to find it on my little iTunes thingy here. Someone who had spent time with Ram Dass, and
well, like Duncan Trussell used to go to his retreats and stuff all the time, and he actually like knew him quite well, and he's quite often got guys like that Raghu Marcus guy and people like that who he knows through Ram Dass foundation type stuff, and like those guys will come on his podcast and just tell their Ram Dass stories and things like that. But yeah, I want to watch this documentary that's sort of about his life story, and I'm pretty sure it's that Raghu Marcus dude as well. Oh, these are all white guys, by the way. Like, they got Hindu names, but they've they've dedicated themselves to the spiritual path, and they've taken on new identities as they do. And obviously, once you get into a lot of those Eastern practices, especially Buddhism, like, the identity is a pretty fluid thing in itself. So it's not shed your skin and take a new name. But I've been meaning to watch this documentary. I'll get around to it sometime soon.
The episode I listened to was with Raghu Marx.
Oh, there you go.
It was the Aubrey Marcus podcast.
Yeah, Aubrey Marcus would have been all over it.
Raghu Marx. They had Raghu Marx on there, and the little intro says that Raghu Marcus spent the last 51 years on a journey of love and learning with Ram Dass.
There you go. And I'm pretty sure he presents a podcast which is just like, he does a little intro, and then there'll be like a 30-minute or 40-minute or whatever lecture from Ram Dass from over the years. Because that's the crazy thing about, like, when you think of the teachings of like ancient spiritual leaders, a lot of it's written down, but someone like Ram Dass, who came up as just a hippie in the 60s, has been recorded his whole life. So there's 50 years of like spiritual enlightenment and whatever, and they all say he's like just the most in fact, I actually was listening to Aubrey Marcus on Duncan Trussell's podcast, which was an old one that I was catching up on. So it was before Ramdas died, but they were both talking about how he's just like, of all the people they've met, he seems to be the one who just like clocked it. You know, the most at ease, most comfortable, most just like, I guess you can call that enlightened person out there. So I'm pretty curious to see what this documentary's got to offer, because especially when it's like a dude who, like, you think of the time he came up and as like a revolutionary type fella, because it's always revolutionary, and when you're picking on teachings from outside your regular cast, traveling to find out these things, like, and also just obviously there's a natural counterculture thing with all the hippies from the 60s. Like, I don't know, there must some tension in that it was all born out of. So that's just one I've got on my list to get around to over the next few days, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Beauty. Well, we'll be back on Thursday, so there's going to be...
I'll tell you all about it then.
Be plenty of yarns to be said and spun, and if you are enjoying what we're doing, and you do have $1 to spare, because everyone's probably going to be tightening up, we are on Patreon. Support us on Patreon, but it feels weird to ask people to do so at this time. But if you do feel the need to be generous, maybe that's just your way of being generous. We obviously will not say no, but we're going to keep on trooping, keep on battling on, and there'll be another podcast recorded on Thursday, done, uploaded, ready for your ears Thursday evening or Friday morning. So stay tuned for that, and kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Just get outside, get a little bit outside every day. Hopefully the sun's shining. It's not here in Auckland. It's rainy, so that's kind of setting the mood, setting the vibe as well. But we're still out here, doing our best. Stay beautiful. Cheer, cheer.